Welcome to Dr Joe Unplugged. This podcast contains general information and is not in any way medical advice. Is there a more useless indicator of health and well-being than the body mass index, also known as the BMI? Short answer is, in my opinion, no, there isn't. It is not an indicator of health and is widely misused, and the figures derived from it are also touted around for benefit of certain groups and organisations. We won't go into that. Just for as an example, recent economic analysis has revealed that in the last 10 years of BMI screening and reporting in 15 states in the USA has cost $210 million and has not had any impact on childhood obesity. Now, if you think it's useless in adults, and I certainly do, it's even more so in children because the measures are not applicable. All right, let's dial it back a couple of steps. BMI was originally developed in the 1800s as an actuarial tool. Quite aside from anything else, people were a lot smaller in those days. They weren't as tall, they weren't as big. And it was designed as a statistical tool. It was not designed as a measure of individual well-being or health. Go to any AFL, NRL, basketball, in England, the Premier League, in America, the NFL or Hockey League. You go to any of these sports, do measurements on the players, and you will find that they are all technically overweight or obese. Why? Because the BMI takes no account of body habitus or muscle mass. It's not an indicator of health. And by the way, in the 1980s, very sneakily, the cutoff was lowered from 27.5 to 25 for a definition of overweight. Now, I should have at the start, apologies, I hope you're all still with me. The body mass index is your weight in kilograms divided by the square of your height in metres, square being the number multiplied by itself. All right, so why are we talking about all of this? Unbeknownst to me, and I'll put my hand up and say I do try to keep across quite a lot in the health and well-being space, but let's face it, nobody can be across everything. There are going to be some changes in the school curriculum for 2024 and 2025 around food and well-being, and in particular, and I'll quote, critiquing and comparing personal food and well-being choices and habits with those of other people, including calculating kilojoules or calories, assessing body weight measurements and BMI, should be discouraged. Why was it ever introduced in the first place? There is no role in the classroom in schools for doing these types of measurements. If the school does have medical checks, if a community nurse comes in and does variably eyesight, hearing, height and weight, that's fine. That is actually all personal, confidential medical information. If you go into the doctor's surgery, they may well measure your height and weight. You can do it yourself at home if you've got a pair of scales and a measure on the wall, but it is not in the classroom. And by the way, in the doctor's surgery, it's confidential. They don't do it in the waiting room with everybody comparing themselves. No. So that it was even a thing, that in a classroom, you've got children comparing their body mass index and what they eat with others, whatever bright spark in education hierarchy came up with that, they should get sacked. Unfortunately, in government, it's more likely to be promoted. So that this is being gotten rid of is a really good thing. I think it's fair to say that it does create its own set of problems. Children will compare to each other. And by the way, everybody's got different tastes, and that can include cultural and religious issues. So if you're, for example, a Muslim, you may eat different foods to if you're Jewish or Christian, and you might not have any religion and eat whatever. And you might not like tomatoes, and the next kid does. It does. It doesn't matter. There's no role for comparison, and absolutely, weight and body mass index should not be compared in a classroom setting. So that they're getting rid of it is good. That it was ever introduced is appalling. A couple of stats just before we finish up today. According to research, 22% of the adolescent population, including 33% of girls 11 to 19, met the criteria for an eating disorder in Australia. More concerning, there was a thing between 2020 and 2021. There's a bit of a carryover from the thing. Some of you may recall that there were certain reactions imposed in relation to the thing, including restrictions about you being able to leave your house and go to school. There was a 63% increase in eating disorder presentations to the Royal Children's Hospital in Melbourne since the thing. And those of you familiar with what happened in Australia will not maybe be surprised that these appalling numbers come from where else but Melbourne. Now, again, I think it's important to say that some of these criteria may tend to exaggerate. And again, a 63% increase doesn't tell us from how much to how much. And it probably also reflects more broadly an increase in mental health problems following on from how the thing was managed. But what's the take home out of all of this? It is up to parents and guardians to oversee and orchestrate what children eat. And good eating habits begin in the home. Now, immediately some of you will say, well, not all parents get it right. Yeah, they may not. But I tell you what, it is not the role of government because they are going to get it wrong. And it is not the role of teachers. It is not their responsibility. It shouldn't be put on them. The teachers should be responsible for teaching reading and writing and arithmetic, certainly in a primary school setting, and perhaps other subjects as well, science, social studies, PE. Get them out running around. That's a great idea, but not doing height, weight, body mass index, and anything else that is essentially personal, confidential medical information has no room in there's no role for that in the classroom. That it is being removed is certainly not before time. And for everybody else, so for the adults who are listening, again, BMI, not a useful health measure. If you want to have some indication, you can do a waist-hip ratio. Conversations around problems with obesity will be for another day and probably quite a few days, in fact. But certainly for our children, encourage sensible eating patterns. Do that in the home environment. You do that, they'll carry it into school. Will they like a treat sometimes? Sure. Can they have a treat sometimes? Sure. Is it good for kids to be overweight? No. Is it good for kids to have eating disorders? Obviously, no. Is that a school issue? No. Thanks for listening to Dr. Joe Unplugged. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, like, and share. You can also follow it on all the socials. There'll be new content uploaded each week.